The Carolina Panthers had a terrible defense last year. 534 points given up, a net differential of minus 193, which was worse last year than it was when they were 2-15 a couple of seasons ago. So they took Bryce Young. They attacked the position after the 2023 season, said we need to go get ourselves a quarterback. 2023, it all goes very poorly. 2024, they're able to get a little bit more offensive help. They go with Xavier, Legette, of course, with Bryce Young. And the defense is bad. And both of those years leading football in the worst differential. 2025, they go out and they're trying to right the wrongs. Princely McMillan on the defensive side out of Ole Miss, one of the better defenses in college football a year ago. Lathan Ransom, they bring in the national champion strong safety from the Ohio State Buckeyes, that hard-hitting type of player. Of course, McMillan, the star wideout, big body, red zone threat for Bryce Young, 6'5" and 220 pounds, as well as who they took, Nick Skouerton out of A&M, another very good defense a year ago. This draft class needs to hit. For Carolina to take another step, I don't think it's a playoff team, but again, we saw them playing better football at the end of the year when the offense was producing. That's fine, but the defense certainly will be better, and they need to be, because once they lost Brian Burns, this defense has just taken a huge step back. Of course, Adam Thielen is there, so the receiving core is pretty good. Bryce Young will make the stride. So here is their 2025 schedule, the preview as well as the predictions for the year. Starting it all off, I've got to win. They're going to be playing at the Jaguars, and they get a win 24-17. I think they can threaten Xavier Legette. It's that 6'3", 225-pounder with 4.3 lows. The low throw 4.3 speed. He can take the top off against Travis. On the defensive side of the ball with J.C. Horn, who can run with him on that side, as well as get pressure on Trevor Lawrence. I think it's a tight game, and Carolina comes up with a big, much-needed win at this point. Chuba Hubbard is one of the more underrated players in all of the NFL, effective throughout all of last season. And it heads into week 2 where they're on the road. They don't get a home game until week 3. At Arizona, I got them losing 25-34. I talked about it consistently in the lead up. It's just the points. You cannot give up all these points, and they're going to have a tall task stopping the Arizona Cardinals and Marvin Harrison Jr. on the outside with Kyler Murray's legs, that dynamic ability. They continue to think about, we could have paid, Brian Burns and kept him on this defense. He didn't want to be here. Of course, there's Derek Brown. There's Treshaun Wharton, who you brought over from the Kansas City Chiefs, a very good veteran addition. But I've got a loss 25-34. Remember, this is going to be a clash from the Ohio States. You got Lathan Ransom going up against Marvin Harrison Jr. You've got, on the defensive side of the ball, Cody Simon and Denzel Burke from the former Ohio State team. There's Jordan Birch, the edge out of Oregon, playing for Arizona. They got Will Johnson. They went all Big Ten, basically, to the Arizona Cardinals. So Will Johnson at corner on the outside. So a bit of a fun one. A lot of Big Ten talent throughout that football game. I got a win against Atlanta. It's a divisional game. Their home opener, 24-20. Their home opener. It's almost October at this point, right? They're able to limit Michael Penix, finally get a bit of pass rush in that game. Legette has a very solid impact. Atlanta's an improved team. They're pretty good. I've got Atlanta being 9-8 next year under Penix and Drake London, Bijan. Very explosive team. Atlanta with the loss on the road, 24-20. Carolina picks it up. We're seeing the growth that we want to see from Bryce Young because they're able to protect him a little bit better. At that point, they're 2-1. It's just a tough loss at New England. They're playing at Gillette Stadium against Drake May and the very well-coached New England Patriots with Mike Vrabel's first year under the helm. Again, another 9-8 team, I think, in New England. These teams continuing to improve. On the defensive side of the football, I mentioned Atlanta and what they have with Jalen Walker, bringing him in. Of course, with James Pierce Jr., they gave up a first-rounder next year. It's going to almost guaranteed to not be 26. It's going to be higher. But they said, no, it doesn't matter. We're going to trade with the Rams. Take James Pierce Jr. Atlanta with those edges. They're improving on the defensive side of the ball. New England, they're working on their run game. Left tackle Will Campbell, Travion Henderson in the backfield, running at that explosiveness to help out Drake May. And then, of course, they still get a threat in Kyle Williams from Washington State. Have them losing 2-2 at that point. And you're sort of okay, Carolina, a tough couple stretches here. Throughout, I've got a 14-24 loss against Miami. Not what you want to see against I would say, not the best of defenses for Miami of what they have, the talent side of the ball. We know the offense, like their speed, their fast, the dynamic, how much motion that they use. That's a tough offense to be able to cover. So I've got a loss, them going 2-3 against Miami. As of the recording of this video, you're watching it right now. I'm not here. I am in Africa currently. That's why I made this video a couple weeks prior to the posting of it, because I wouldn't have service be able to work on any content in Africa. So if there's injuries, there's guys I've talked about being impacts and they're hurt in training camp or in the preseason, it's because I'm recording this a couple of weeks ago and I don't know the current state, of course. I'm not a future teller of what will be happening. So that explains why maybe a couple of the guys I talk about won't be factors to the next season, because I'm making this ahead of time. So a 2-3 Carolina team, and you're playing a home game against the Dallas Cowboys. Of course, we know about George Pickens going there. Of course, Tyler Booker, the offensive guard for Dallas. They're trying to lean a little bit more into the run game. I just think that Carolina is able to make him pay on the outside. Trayvon Diggs is back. Micah Parsons from the knee, he was struggling with a lot of last season. They can get pressure on Dak Prescott and win one of those shootouts, one of those games where they need to outscore the other team and actually do it. That's a team they can do it against the Dallas Cowboys. I think it doesn't even matter when you play Dallas at home or on the road. I know they pack in 90,000 or so in that stadium, but it's a game that they're able to win. They play good on the defensive side of the ball. Maybe they get a takeaway or two from the youngsters with McMillan. Like, I would like to see McMillan and Scourton really develop and rise up in that depth chart. I think there's the possibility to do it. You know, there's Derek Brown and there's Patrick Jones for them to fill in for and to get a good amount of playing time within that roster. It's not like there's a couple of guys. It's like, no shot. I think they can be impacts right away. At that point in the year, Carolina is 3-3, and things have been going pretty well. You're seeing a lot of what you want to see. It's just a tough game at MetLife against the New York Jets and Justin Fields. Justin Fields has Garrett Wilson, his former Ohio State Buckeye teammate, to throw to. That's a lot of fun. That Lathan Ransom from the Buckeyes we talked about earlier with Arizona, he gets to go up against Justin. He wasn't there, as far as I can remember, with Justin or Garrett Wilson, but still the Buckeye lineage and cool to see. A big hit. I just see it coming. Lathan Ransom with a big hit on Fields, a big hit on Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall. Somebody throughout that game, Ransom has a huge impact, and that's just the way you feel him. That's the type of player he is. I do have them losing 24-31. They're not able to limit Fields' impact. Where's the athlete? Who is the guy on the Carolina defensive side of the ball that's just going to disallow the explosive runs? Like, you know who it would be. For San Francisco, they've got a Fred Warner. Baltimore, they've got a Roquan Smith. A team like the Seattle Seahawks with Emin Wari now, even as a rookie, you just know he's going to be filling in. There's not a whole lot. These guys don't grow on trees, but usually a roster has one player you can lean on to limit the quarterback or be that threat in the middle to make him say no. I think Lathan Ransom can be that. He's not per se the same type of athlete those guys are, but he brings the hammer and he brings the force, and he's not afraid to lay the wood. 3-4 at that point. It's just a couple of tough matchups. You're home against the Bills at that point, right? I've got a 28-17 loss. Really giving up a lot of points here in Buffalo. James Cook and Josh Allen, it's so tough to stop. Allen continues to improve year over year. Coleman now on the outside, of course, Kincaid and Knox to fill in there. They've got Maxwell Hairston, who can run. He's one of the only corners in the National Football League that can fully run stride for stride with Xavier Legette on the outside, because he ran like, a 4.27, something freakish 40-yard dash in Harrison after that injury, but still they took him in the first round, a loss to the Buffalo Bills. So at that point, they're 3-5. Again, I've got them giving up a ton of points to the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay is going to have their way because of Josh Jacobs for one, and Matthew Golden. Again, there's J.C. Horn, who's got a ton of speed on the outside vertically that you can't fully take the top off of him. But Green Bay with Golden now and Jaden Reed and Dobbs and Watson, as well as Kraft in the middle of the field, like they're good. And then the defensive side of the ball, they just sent, they're like, hey, Jair Alexander, we're fine without even paying you. After a 3-3 start, Carolina drops to 3-6. But if you're a Carolina Panther fan, you don't have to be negative. Because again, this doesn't have to be the year. You're continuing. You want to see the positive strides out of Bryce Young. And I do think you do see a lot of it. You just want to see something turn around on defense. And I continuously see games where I think Carolina's defense will struggle. Again, we talk about it. I think there's going to be 3 rookies immediately playing, right? McMillan, Scourton, and Ransom. I win. I think that against the Saints at home, 26-21, they can limit it because that's a team that seems one-sided, a little bit aged, has New Orleans. They had all that cap space chewed up and taken with against New Orleans. That's just a matchup I see favorable in a lot of places. I think Chuba Hubbard's able to run for a lot of yards, and Bryce Young's able to be quite mobile. 4-6. Monday Night Football, the 49ers, I talked about being a squad that people are a lot higher on than I personally am, just because of don't have the faith in Brock Purdy. Remember watching how impactful Deebo Samuel was for the offense, as well as a healthy Christian McCaffrey. Without Ayuk throughout the year, maybe those guys are there. There's just a little bit of too much concern that someone might go down for San Francisco, and even if they're all healthy, still have to win a game. And I've got Carolina coming up with that win in a huge fashion against San Francisco 49ers. That's actually, I made a mistake there. I've got them beating. Then Carolina beats the Falcons 31-28. It's just a shootout. Bryce Young goes toe-to-toe with Michael Penix Jr. and Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Mooney, all those guys in Atlanta. Bryce Young outdoes it. He's able to do it with his legs, that mobility in the red zone, picking up first downs. We saw him make plays throughout last year with his legs on the move. What he was doing at Alabama, we continue to see him do that at the NFL level. They come up with a huge win, 31-28, to move them to 5-6, and then head into a game at San Francisco. That Monday night win, 23-17, they beat the 49ers, moved to 6-6 before a showdown at home against the Rams. I've had them losing to the Rams, dropping to 6-7. There's a glimmer of playoff hope. That's what I'm telling you. Within the division, within the playoff picture of teams, it's going to be a bit less this year. There's not going to Washington 12-5, Green Bay what were they 11-6 a year ago, and Minnesota Vikings 14-3 as a wild card. What was happening a season ago? It's just the Rams might be the best team in the NFC next year. That receiving core, the duo specifically, is top 5, and they've got a top 5 defense. That front, they're young and they're continuing to improve. It's a matchup that I hate. 24-14, a loss before the bye week, which for sure helps. Setting up their 6-7 at New Orleans and a loss. I just talked about a good win against the Saints on the road against New Orleans. Again, you see a little bit of the inconsistency or struggles of a young quarterback and Bryce Young in his 3rd year in the NFL. They are able to get a comeback going a little bit late, I think, against New Orleans and Tyler Shuck, who clearly is the starter at this point. A team I think is going to be horrible next year in New Orleans, which might make this one all the more tougher, but a loss before they get a huge win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 26-22. Remember at the end of last year where they had a whole bunch of close games and Bryce Young was making strides? This is it. They're going up against such a tough Tampa Bay Buccaneer football team. That's the best trio or quadruplet of wide receivers in football, from Mike Evans, Chris Godwin coming back. He was like the #1 fantasy wide receiver before he went down last year at the ankle injury. They took Emeka Egbuka already with Jalen McMillan. Remember him from the national championship team from the Huskies with McMillan and Polk and Odunze on that squad. So he's one of those guys that impact. And they also took Tez Johnson in the 7th round. Like, that receiving core is loaded, and they are built to be a very good team. But a win against the Tampa Bay Bucks puts Carolina in a spot where they are still battling for positioning. They're 7-8 at that point in the year. Can they get something done in a heartbreaker? I've got 28-31 against the Seahawks. Will it be Sam Darnold? Will it be Jalen Milroe? Don't exactly know, but I've got them giving up a ton of points. Remember, that was the theme last year, 534 given up, a net of -191. The year before was 180 when they were 2-15 compared to 5-12. It was worse in the year in which they were 2-15. A loss against Seattle, and then a loss at the Bucs. The Bucs just have too much to play for. The division is on the line, as well as potential seeding within the conference for the playoffs, and the Bucs beat them 33-17. So that's the main theme I have from Carolina, is more of the struggles once again in terms of stopping defenses. They're so young on that side of the ball, and as well as offense, like it's going to take time learning from your veteran players, understanding like Wharton being able to take guys under his wing and really commit to the culture. He's got all that winning experience and bringing it to Carolina, and a guy like Adam Thielen who's been around doing it at a high level for such a long time in Minnesota. He was that Robin to the Stephon Diggs. At one point, he was the Batman to Stephon Diggs being his Robin there in Minnesota. So can those guys do that, be there supportive? And it's just going to be, it's tough at that point, because that'll be year 3 with Bryce Young. 2-15, 5-10, or 5-12, 7-10. The progression is there. Setting up a massive contract year. Year 4, they pick up the 5th-year option, but year 4, Bryce Young determines whether or not he's the future. I know that's not what Carolina Panther fans want to understand. They might say, hey, if it doesn't happen in year 3, it won't at all. You have to remember, though, how bad this roster is. We're talking about -180 and -193 the previous 2 years. This defense has been terrible. It's not all on Bryce Young. It just can't be. So you have to build and put places in around it. Let those McMillans and Scoutons and Ransoms help out on the defensive side of the ball. Develop with Wharton, J.C. Horn being able to be an impact. The outside, bring it in and continue to put more weapons with McMillan. And then in that year 4, see if Carolina can compete for a division. And if it does not happen at that point, guess what? Some great quarterback classes are coming out in the next 2 years. That's the only tricky thing, is like if Bryce doesn't play great, hey, it's most likely, if you just said 7-10 and we're picking 13th, 14th with that record, there's a great quarterback class. That is the tricky thing. Do you commit to Bryce, or do you end up going to draft someone else? That was the question I think Carolina will have to answer at the end of this year. So thank you so much for watching this. Fired up to keep making these. So much fun. I'm in Africa right now, having a great time in safari, watching the Great Migration, and I think I'm in Tanzania and Kenya. So that's a whole bunch of fun I'm having. But hope you had fun watching this video here, and keep looking forward to more content. Whether you're a Carolina Panther fan or just a football fan in general, make sure to stay tuned as we get ready for the upcoming football season. So thank you so much. Make sure to comment. Let me know what you think, and I will see you next time.
Best player in college football.
That Georgia and Ohio State game, New Year's Eve, is going to be a classic.
Josh Blunder. Hi, everybody. I'm Josh Blunder.
To the 40, 35, 30, Espinosa to the 20.